Hi, and welcome to class number 2 in the series. I'm Ann Forrest. My email is seattleprepares@gmail.com, and I'm really glad you're here. I wanted to go over a problem with the slideshow for the smartphone apps that some folks had found. If you have an Android phone and you're trying to download the Pulse Point apps, you want to Google Pulse Point AED, and that helps the system locate and verify that there's AEDs in certain places in the city. And then Pulse Point Respond is the app that would tell you if somebody was nearby that needed help, that needed cardiac help, help with their heart, and could guide you to where the closest AED is. Again, if you have an Android phone, just search for those words and I will get around to changing the slideshow to make it easier for Android users to get these two apps on their phone. So we're going to talk about water tonight. Where do we get our water? 30% of it comes from the Tolt River watershed. So Seattle is right here. So this is northeast. That's a watershed. And then 70% of it comes from the Cedar River watershed. So as you can tell, our water comes from quite a ways away, and it is traveling through pipes that entire time. The pipes are very old. I heard recently that the city just replaced their last bit of wooden pipe. So I think that's like 100 years old. Any pipes in the ground are going to have a hard time during an earthquake. So the water and sewer pipes are very, very old. And when the earth shakes, pipes break. You will hear me say that often in this series. Water, sewer, and gas lines are all buried, and they all will struggle when there's an earthquake, especially if they have to go over land that is prone to liquefaction. So after an earthquake, this is what I want your to-do list, your checklist to be. You will check on people and pets around you. That's number one. The second thing you're going to do is take care of your utilities. We'll talk about gas and electricity next week, but I wanted to start with water because I want you to really get in the habit of stocking up on water in your household. If you at all have the space, please tuck away bottled water. You will find it immensely useful, and we'll get into that. So the second thing you do after an earthquake, after you've checked on people and pets, is manage utilities. And we want you to turn off water to the building. That does two things. It keeps contaminated water from coming into your building, and it also keeps water from exiting your building just out of gravity. So you want to keep the water that's in your building that's clean and drinkable. You want it to stay there and be available to you and your household. So there's two different places in a typical single family home. There's two different places to turn off the water. One is very close to your house. It's actually inside your house where the water pipes enter the building. And the other one is out at the street where the water meter is. So this is what it might look like inside your house. Again, all of these pipes are in the inside of the house. This one looks like it's a basement. This is just an example of what it might look like. And then the bottom left one happens to be the one in my home, and it does come into the basement. I put a tag on there to help people remember what to do, to A, find it, and B, remember what to do after an earthquake. And it's always best to turn off the water after an earthquake. Again, it keeps the water in your house clean, and it doesn't allow you to bring in contaminants. And it also keeps the water in your pipes from just draining out of your house because of gravity. Turn off the water inside your house. The other good thing about turning the water off after an earthquake is that you can always turn it back on. If you find out that the pipes seem to be in pretty good working order and you're not having any breaks anywhere, then it's easy for the homeowner to turn the water back on, no problem. This is what it would look like if for some reason you can't get to inside the building to turn off the water. You can always do it out at the street. This gentleman on the left has a tool that gets down deep into where the switch is. So that's a nice tool to have, but it's not essential. It just helps you kind of get through all the muck and the dirt that's typically in these little holes. If you move the muck and the dirt and the leaves out of the way, this is what it would look like. So this is the water line running in this direction. This is the city shut off. We don't want to mess with that. We want to go over here to this side. This is where the homeowner would turn it off. If that switch, that toggle is in line with the pipe, the water is flowing. How to turn it off is just go counterclockwise to the pipe. So across the pipe keeps the water from flowing into your house. You can do this for neighbors if they are out of town or not at home. It's not going to hurt anything if you turn off their water at the street. You can get to it because, again, it's out at the street, and it might save them from losing a lot of water. We'll want to talk about the city and whether or not they're going to give us drinking water after a disaster. And they are not. I'll show you their priorities. And this is straight from the horse's mouth. Their number one priority after a big earthquake is going to be fighting fires and search and rescue. They're going to use water to fight fires. The second thing they're going to concentrate on is getting water up and running to those essential facilities like hospitals and emergency response centers. So the really critical places will get water before anybody else. And then other city facilities and essential businesses will be supplied with water so that they can get up and running and help the most amount of people. And then, and only then, will the city think about drinking water for those of us on the ground. This is, like I said, straight from the horse's mouth. They're telling us this. Emergency drinking water is pretty far down on their list, which is why we as households need to store as much water as we possibly can. So when they get to the point of worrying about drinking water for the populace, they're going to go to the densely populated areas first, and those hardest hit. Maybe straight downtown where there's lots of folks living in towers, a lot of people, very populated, and they don't have much room to store water. Single family home neighborhoods, we are so low on their priority list. It will be weeks before they'll think about drinking water for us. This is a device, I call it a water buffalo. I'm sure it has another name. The city has a few of these in storage. And when I say a few, I mean under a dozen. I think it's close to 6. So not many. They will deploy these after a disaster, but it will be days to a week before this is ever going to be a priority. They have to move them into place. They have to fill them with water, assuming they can get fresh water, clean water, move them into place. And then it's a matter of kind of controlling the crowds around them, keeping them clean, keeping them stocked. Drinking water is really low on the list. How much water do you need to store in your household? The goal is 1 gallon per person per day for 2 weeks. So 14 gallons for every person in your household. That would be the ideal. More if you can, but at least 2 weeks worth. And I know that takes up a ton of space, but do the best you can. Here's a chart. Depending on how many folks in your household, that's how much water you need to aim for. That's the minimum. We used to say 3 days, and then we said 10 days, and now we're finally saying 2 weeks, which is much more realistic than 3 days. Figure out how many gallons of water you need and start moving that water into your house, into your home. How am I supposed to store that much? Tuck it wherever you can. Work with neighbors. Maybe they've got a basement you can store water in. Store as much as you can in every little nook and cranny that you can. Can I drink water from streams, rivers, ponds, lakes, or mysterious springs? No, not in an urban setting. We have too many chemicals. We have oil on our roads. We have gasoline in cars and boats. We have insecticides and pesticides. There's just too many chemicals that you cannot filter out of water after an earthquake in an urban setting to make it safe and drinkable. So the idea that you're going to walk down to the shore of Lake Washington and haul back a bucket of water and purify it in your house, it's just not going to happen. You're not going to be able to get it clean enough to make it safe to drink. And the shoreline is going to be a mess after a large earthquake, really after any kind of earthquake. Just boats sloshing around, houseboats sloshing around, water kicking up on the shores. You're going to have a really hard time even getting to the water's edge, especially mysterious springs. Just because water's bubbling up in the middle of the street does not mean it's clean to drink. It's just as likely or more likely that it is very contaminated. So what about swimming pools or spas, hot tubs? Nope. They could be contaminated because water got into them. It's very possible that they break and the water is gone anyway. So certainly don't count on it. And again, they have all those chemicals in it, which is very hard to filter out. So you could use it for personal hygiene, maybe for cleaning, but definitely not for drinking. Other sources of water, hot water tank is a great resource of water. Some of them are 40 to 60 gallons of water. So it goes a really, really long way towards meeting the needs of your household. I just want to point out that the water spout on a hot water heater is at the very bottom, and that'll come in. I'll tell you why that's important later on. You want to make sure if you do have a hot water tank that it is securely fixed to the studs of your house so that it does not tip over and break and lose all that valuable water after an earthquake. So make sure it's strapped down tight. This is the wrong kind of strapping. This is called plumber's tape. If you look at your hot water tank and something like this is what's holding it in place, please call somebody and have it replaced with something better. That is not strong enough. You can use the water in the tank of your toilet, not in the bowl. That's way too contaminated, but the tank has never touched human waste, so it's clean enough to drink. I would definitely siphon it out of there and treat it with some bleach, 5 to 8 drops of bleach per gallon. It's not a lot of water, but it is some. I would caution you against using any kind of chemical in your toilet. This is the blue deodorizers that a lot of us have used or seen. You know, they're lovely for making your toilet smell good, but not helpful if you're trying to use the water in the back of the tank. So avoid those. If you're going to buy bottled water, of these 2 containers you see on your screen, I would go with the clear plastic. It seems a little bit hardier than the milky white plastic on the left. This is a really good deal. The Smart Food Service, I think it's a chain that kind of runs throughout Seattle. You can get 6 gallons of water packaged like that for about $7, which is a really pretty good deal. I'm going to encourage you, if you buy bleach for your household, like for laundry uses, to buy bleach in small enough quantities that you go through it fairly regularly. I would not buy a gallon of bleach and let it sit there for a disaster, because bleach starts degrading as soon as it's made. They actually make bleach stronger in the summer because it degrades faster, even in the transport getting to stores and stuff. Buy small quantities of bleach and go through it more often so that you always have a fairly fresh source of bleach in your house. It is very good for cleaning, disinfecting, and it's very good for making water clean enough to drink. This is a nice little item to have, not essential, but it's helpful. This happens to be a washing machine hose, just a short little hose. I could hook it onto the bottom of my hot water tank, that valve that's at the very bottom, and then run the hose up into some kind of container to catch that water. I will send out a handout. It's a half sheet of paper on how to get the water out of your hot water tank. It does take hours for it to cool down, so it should not be your first source of water by any stretch, but let it cool down and siphon off the water, and then that's where the 5 to 8 drops of bleach into each gallon, that's where that comes in. It's not essential to do that, but it's probably not a bad idea. This next picture is a 50-gallon barrel made out of plastic, food grade. It's an option if you have the space. Not suitable for earthquake preparedness. These are super common. In fact, when I first got into the field, first started thinking about this, I gave these as Christmas presents. Life straws or something like that is not suitable for an earthquake in an urban environment. Again, it filters out things that would be a problem in fresh running streams when you're out backpacking, hiking, camping, that kind of stuff, but not suitable for an urban setting. There's no charcoal in them, which is definitely something you would need to get rid of some of the chemicals that we have around us. So those are not a great idea. And then this one, I see this one a lot. It is a device. It's a plastic bag, basically, that expands to fill your tub. So you can fill it with water and keep the water in there clean and covered. Very good if you know that the disaster is coming. My husband, who used to live in Okinawa for a couple of years as a kid, they used to fill those up before the typhoon struck land. So great for some disasters, not good for earthquakes. You're going to more than likely pull in dirty water when you pull in water and fill your tub. The last thing we're going to talk about is power outage lights. This will be really quick. They are just lights that turn on when they sense that power in your house has gone off. These are 2 examples. Plug them into an outlet if you have any free outlets. And you want to look for spaces where if you were there and the power went out, you would have a very hard time getting out of because it's so dark. So in my house, it's the basement. Hallways are really good for this. Any space where, again, if the lights went out and you were caught there, then getting out of that room and finding your normal light sources would be difficult. So the 2 that are on the screen, they plug in, they stay charged all the time. If the power goes out, they light up. And then you can walk over to them, pull them out of the wall, point them at the ground, they become your flashlight. Here's another power outage light source. It's a light bulb that senses when there's no more power to that outlet, that lamp, and will turn on. And then this one is actually hardwired into your ceiling. So this would be really good, I think, in a basement if the power was out. would help you get out. So just something to think about. You can pick them up just about anywhere. They're not super expensive. The ones on the left, the ones that go into the outlets, those are, I don't know, $15, $20 maybe a pop. So just think about it. Look around your household, see if you can find a place where that might be very handy. Might become really helpful after an earthquake, but all kinds of other emergencies, power outages as well. So that's our class for tonight. Next week, February 2nd at 7 p.m., we'll be talking about utilities. So the two utilities we didn't cover tonight, electricity and gas. And then we're also going to talk about sanitation, and man, is that important. Please make that class, or at least watch the recording afterwards. Emergency toilets are going to be incredibly important after a disaster. So hope to see you next week. That's all for tonight. Thank you.